Hi, I'm Ariana, and I'm a member of the Harvard's Climate Initiative, and I'm here with another member, Christiane Turnheim, who is the owner and operator of Good Spirits Farm, along with her husband, which is located on East Bear Hill right here in Harvard. So Christiane, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you got started here?
We got started here in 2013 when we bought this property. And as you can hear, we are not Americans. We are originally from Austria, and we had already a small farm in Austria. Before we moved here, it was always a kind of side job because we have different main jobs. And first we started in Arlington, lived there, settled there because our sons wanted to be more kind of in an urban environment. But once they were off to college, we started looking to find a farm again where we can work the land because we enjoy it so much. And after 2 years of looking in this area, Stowe, Berlin, Bolton, Harvard, we finally found this property. And it's not so easy to find something that has more than 5 acres. It's not wooded. And here we have 8.5 acres and have an orchard, grow vegetables, flowers, have a roadside farm stand, and have bees, and sell the honey. So
Great. Now, it's clear that your farm isn't set up in the most conventional way. So could you tell us a little bit about your farming philosophy and maybe show us some unique things on your farm?
um, perhaps let me start to answer this question to tell you a bit more about our vision for the farm. Because as you correctly say, it's not just the usual way. Our vision is first we want to become something like Noah's Ark for certain fruit trees, berry fruit, other plants like white flowers with medicinal values, and so it's kind of saving varieties that are pushed aside by the agricultural industry because these varieties have issues for the mass production, like they have a short shelf life or something like that. For example, when you take apples, when you go to a store, you find perhaps 5 or 6 different varieties. We grow here more than 50 varieties, but there are more than 300 that exist in the Northeast, so even we just have a small sample. We grow medlar trees, pawpaw trees, persimmon, not the garden huckleberries is the name, aronia berries, Saskatoon, June berries. So a wide variety of fruits that are not so common. So this is one vision. The other vision is to turn this part here with the bees and so into a permaculture food forest, to have an example how you can grow enough food calories even without the traditional agricultural way of vast stretches of monoculture, because this is not sustainable. This has so many issues for our environment that I feel like we should find new ways and kind of use nature as guideline. And the third vision is in the barn we would like to share our knowledge in the barn, to have workshops, to over time become a little bit like educational center as a vision. I don't know whether we will make it, but yeah, this is kind of the vision for it.
Okay. You've mentioned that you use techniques such as permaculture and regenerative farming to make your farm more sustainable. Could you tell us a bit about what those terms mean and why the practices are beneficial?
Yeah, perhaps let's use this small demo kitchen garden that we used here for a workshop to explain this a bit more. If I would use conventional gardening here, I would probably have just 1 or 2 crops that I would be growing, because you have a kind of monoculture. I would have exposed soil, and instead of covering it up like it's normal in nature. Yes, so. And I may use, if I get pest chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides to fight diseases. When I work in regenerative agriculture, as we do, we try to improve the condition, to give back to the soil, not to take just out. So we use, for example, grass clippings to cover up the soil, and they will decompose there and enrich the soil again. We would not use here any pesticides or anything. We use, for example, companion planting, like these flowers over there, the marigold, because they repel certain pests. We have these reddish type of mustards here. They attract certain insects that are predatory insects that eat the pests that we do not want on our crops. Yes. So these are techniques that you use in regenerative agriculture. And you use crop rotation, for example, so that for example, tomatoes, if they are grown every year at the same spot, you are more likely to get certain tomato diseases because they overwinter. So the bacteria and the fungi. So therefore you need to rotate them. So these are techniques used in regenerative agriculture. In permaculture, it's more focused on the perennials. Yes? So to move away from annuals, because if we always dig up the soil, till it, put in then the annual seeds, we simply first increase greenhouse gases because the soil emits certain gases, and then the wind will blow away the good humus layer, the rain washes the nutrients away, and that's not very sustainable. Yeah. So then we have to add all these fertilizers and so on. That's the difference in permaculture. We say if you use perennials, the nature is self-sustainable.
A lot of what you just mentioned ties into climate change mitigation, which is a primary focus of Harvard's climate initiative. I imagine that on a farm you see the effects of climate change every day. Could you tell us a little bit about how you've seen those effects over the years?
Yes, we noticed, for example, in the past 6 years that in spring we start later and later because spring is unpredictable. It's often rainy. We have water standing here in the vegetable garden, so we can't work the soil yet. This is, for example, that we are now decided to plan a greenhouse addition to the house so that we can start farming there, grow our plants there. But on the other hand, in fall, it gets later that we get the first hard freeze. So the past 2 years I was still harvesting raspberries November 1st and put them to the farm stand.
Now, there are a lot of farms here in Harvard. The big ones like Carlson, Westward, and Doe, a lot of people know about, but there are many small farms like yours as well. Could you tell us a little bit about what it's like to run a small farm here in town?
Yes, of course. And I would like to point out here that I'm a member of the Agricultural Advisory Commission in town, and my mission is to represent a voice for all small farms. So I don't want to make this video just about us, more about the interest of all small farms here in Harvard. And issues as a small farmer, there are a variety. One is that many farm owners say that we don't know very well all about the regulations that are in town, that it's not easy to find information. Other issues are with the type of farm that you have. For example, we have here a vegetable farm. We have unused land. We could grow more, but we are just the two of us. So we always need to balance what the two of us can do, because if we have to hire someone, we have to sell more, and we have basically, we calculated double our production to justify hiring someone. But if it's just the two of us, then we need to balance marketing needs, growing, working in the fields. We need to think of what can we store, how do we store it, how do we sell it, so what goes at the roadside farm stand. So that's something you always have to think about and find your priorities.
Right. You mentioned earlier that Harvard has more acreage in small farms than the three biggest ones everyone knows, Carlson, Doe, and Westward. Could you talk a little bit about the support that these small farms need and what they receive?
Of course. First again, a few numbers here. The three farms that you mentioned combined, they work on about 400 acres, and we have 1,450 acres in agriculture in Harvard, which means all the other smaller farms work on a little bit more than 1,000 acres. So they are really important to Harvard and determine the rural character of Harvard. So the support that we can, of course, residents buying local is a big help. But I feel it would be great if the state of Massachusetts would kind of recognize the value of small farms a bit more and support them a bit more.
I have one last question for you, and that's about your bees. It's clear that you have quite a few, so they must have a big effect on your farm. Could you talk a little bit about how your bees shape your farming practices and why they're so important?
Yeah, they are shaping our farming practice in a way that we just grow many plants just because the bees like them. So, for example, we have lots of goldenrod coming. Plants that other people would consider weeds. We have them because the bees love them, because they help them so much. For example, in spring, the lawn is covered with dandelions because it's one of the first food they are getting. And you can see all the bees on the dandelions. So that certainly shaped us. And we have the bees because of the orchids. 80% of all the food crops that we have in this world need bees for or other pollinators simply for pollination. So we couldn't grow most of our food without pollinators. And that's the reason why they are so important and why it's so important to do also something against the climate change, try to stop it or ease it or whatever we can do at this point, because bees are affected by it. If nature is, for example, getting out of sync, if springs are getting not as stable, as predictable, the bees may still be in the hive while the first trees that need pollination are already blooming. So we need to keep everything in sync so that we keep our food. And we need to make sure that our bees and other pollinators have a good environment to thrive.
Great. So that's all I have. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone watching did too. Hopefully we'll be back, either me or someone else, to learn more about your bees, because there's a lot to learn there. But for now, thank you so much.
Thank you for your visit. It was a real pleasure to have had you here, and I love to explain and tell you and everyone else about our farm.